The fourth way of defining terms is by genus and difference. Did I tell you there are 5 ways of defining terms? I'm only going to give you 4. I think I had a brain cramp for a second there. I was thinking there were 5, but I've got 4. Genus and difference, okay? Now, genus is the larger class to which a thing belongs. Okay, so you take a term, you think of the larger class of items that that term belongs to, okay? So, for instance, a buck. A buck. What is the genus of a buck? Well, it depends, of course, on what you're talking about. You may be talking about a rabbit, or you might be talking about a deer, okay? But it is a buck. That's the... it's a type of deer. Of course, another type of deer would be a doe. Okay? So what's the difference part? Well, if you take a buck, then you have you have deer. You have these species of deer. The buck is one species. The doe is another species. So you think about, okay, buck and doe. And then you think, what's different between the two? And the obvious difference is that a buck is a male deer. And I'm sure the hunters would tell us that it's technically an adult male deer, but regardless, we're able to say it that way. A brother. If we define brother by genus and species, a brother is a sibling. There are 2 kinds of siblings. So you've got sibling here, which is the genus. You have brother, and you have sister. And until secularism creates a third sex, that's all we've got. Brother and sister. So a brother would be a male sibling. A father, defined by genus and difference, would be the male parent. All right, let's go to a different class of things. Let's use triangle. A triangle, the genus of triangle is a polygon. So a triangle then, what makes it different from other polygons like rectangles or pentagons or hexagons is that it is a 3-sided polygon. Now, it is important to learn how to define terms by genus and difference because you want to use rhetorically effective definitions. Too often, when I hear students speaking and inexperienced speakers speaking, they will take a definition and quote verbatim the definition given in Webster's 1828 dictionary. No doubt it's a great definition. And nobody is impugning the honor of Mr. Webster here. But some of his definitions are so wordy and so exact that a listening audience cannot wrap their brain around that definition. In order to use a rhetorically effective definition, you have to come up with a definition that your audience can hear and visualize, that they can wrap their brain around, that they can understand. Now, you know from our discussion of ethos that the more technical and precise you are in your meaning, Number one will require you to use bigger words, polysyllabic words. And number two, you lose your audience. So you sacrifice intimacy for the sake of exactness or precision. In rhetoric, you want to be careful about that. Not to say that there's no place for precision and accuracy. There certainly is. And depending on the audience that you're speaking to, you especially want to be, a professional audience, an audience that is more familiar with the nuance of the subject. You need to be more precise with them. But then you remember that the more that they know, the more your audience knows and understands the subject, the more precision won't sacrifice intimacy. In fact, a lack of precision, a failure to be precise, would drive your audience away, would create a wedge between you and your audience. So you want to be careful about that. But you also want to, I want you to understand that for most audiences, you need to take Webster's 1828 dictionary, and from it, or some other scholarly dictionary, and from it, determine what the genus of the term is. And then, what distinguishes that term from other related species of the same genus. And then identify the difference, add that to the genus. Okay? So, a pen, for instance, a pen, not like a hog pen, but the pen like this that I have in my pocket. Now, I just defined it by example. But I would want, rather than use a lengthy, technical, jargon-laden definition, I want to say that a pen is a writing instrument that uses ink. That's a definition that we can all appreciate. In logic, we want to make sure that we define our terms in rhetorically effective ways. Now that deals with the term, and when dealing with terms, we want to make sure that we know how to define terms. There are 6 rules for defining by genus and difference. Now first, before I give those rules, I should mention to you that definitions by example, definitions by synonym, and definitions by etymology will not give you a precise definition. They may give you a more rhetorically effective definition, but they will not give you the precise kind of definition that you may need in a discourse, in a piece of discourse. Genus and difference will be the most accurate way to define your terms. There are some rules that you need to be aware of and follow as you define this way. Rule number 1, state what is essential about the term. This is the most important rule of all. State what is essential, not efficient. State what is essential. I got talking and forgot what word I wanted to say. State what is essential about the term. 9 times out of 10, if you keep that rule, you will keep all of the others. Okay, so state what is essential about the term without being redundant in it. Okay? A pen. You don't want to be redundant. A pen is something you write with that is a writing utensil that uses ink. Avoid that kind of redundancy. Number 2. The definition must have the same extension as the term, not too broad or too narrow. The same extension, okay? For instance, let's take the pen again. If I define a pen as merely as a writing utensil, that's too broad. It's too broad because it includes too much. There are other writing utensils, like pencils, for example, that would not qualify as pens. So you want to make sure that your term is defined sufficiently so that it's not including too much, but also so that it's not excluding too much. Let's see, can I think of an example here of a term defined too narrowly? Okay, I'll move on. Number 3, your definition must not be circular. Here I am in front of the camera proving to you that I cannot spell and think at the same time, or spell and talk at the same time, I should say. Definition must not be circular. As a general rule, the term being defined should not be used in the definition. Sometimes that can be difficult. Round. A shape that is round like a ball. That would be definition. That would be a circular definition. All right. So round is a shape that goes in a circle. Sometimes adjectives are the most difficult, especially to keep these rules. It's hard to state, for instance, what is essential about beauty, and things like that. All right, but it must not be circular. Number 4, your definition must not be negative when it could be positive. Must not be negative when it can be positive. Some terms can only be defined negatively. But even then, okay, for example, dark. Dark would be defined as not light. How do you define dark? The absence of light is negative, but it sounds positive. It's stated in a way that is positive. Okay? But you don't want to define male as not female. Male has some distinctive qualities that you would identify in your definition. The same thing, car. You would not define car as not a truck, or a vehicle that is not a truck. All right, number 5, your definition must not be unclear or figurative. I like to use that little song about notes, about the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do definitions as examples. Some of the do, re, mi definitions are, which they're not actually definitions, but anyway, those definitions, some are examples, good examples of how to define a term. Like, for example, doe is a female deer. But others are examples of misuse or improper defining of terms. For instance, ray. a drop of golden sun. So that's something you want to watch out for. Don't be unclear or figurative. Often a poetic definition will be unclear or figurative. And then number 6, a definition must be the same part of speech as the term. Must be the same part of speech as the term. Especially be careful going from verbs to nouns, okay? To run, you would not say pace quicker than a walk. Because to run is a verb and a pace is a noun. So that would be a wrong definition. To run should be defined as a verb. To move at a pace more rapid than a walk. That would be, it's probably not too broad, but it might be too broad because jogging is not running. But my definition would include a jog, to move at a pace quicker than a walk. So probably would call for a little more precision. You would need to look that definition up. Okay, but I've given this to you. These are rules for defining by genus and difference. And all of this deals with the verbal expression of term. Next, we need to deal with statements. Statements are the basic building block of logic. All logic is built on the statement. So the first thing you need to understand is what a statement is. A statement is a sentence that is true or false. A sentence that is true or false, or as we define it in my 8th grade logic class, a statement is a sentence with a truth value. All right, so it is either true or false. There is no middle ground, and this is the other building block of logic. Let me look and see if I have this in here. No, I don't. Okay. Let me put this over here, and we'll take a moment, a little sidebar here. The two basic building blocks of logic are, first of all, statements. All of logic is built on statements, the relation of terms to each other, and then also on the laws of logic. There are 3 laws of logic. The first is the law of non-contradiction. The second is the law of excluded middle. And the third one, for you math majors, is the law of identity. The law of non-contradiction says that a statement cannot be both true and false. Okay, so you cannot say he is a man and he is not a man. Now, some of you girls might be tempted to say that about a guy or two, perhaps that you know. He is a man and he is not a man. But in order to do that, you have to use man in a different sense. So when you're using the same term in the same sense, it cannot be both true and false at the same time. The law of excluded middle says that there is no middle ground between true and false. No middle ground between true and false. There is not that kind of gray area into which truth falls in between. Okay, so a thing is either true or it is false, but there's not a third option between the two. The world likes to promote relativism. That's your truth. What's true for you might not be true for me. Well, there's a sense in which that's true. If we're talking about whether I'm cold and you're not cold, but when it comes to other things, like for example, the fact that this is paper or it is not. If I call this a pickup truck right here, you can say, no, that's false. All right? If I pick this chair up and say this is not a chair, you can say, no, you're wrong on that. All right? That's the law of excluded middle. There's no middle ground in between. The last is the law of identity, which says that if it's true, it's true, and if it's false, it's false. All right? So it has to be either true or false. The law of excluded middle says that there's no middle ground between the two. If it's true, then it's true. If it's false, then it's false. And it can't be both at the same time. That covers everything, and it really just shows how exclusive true is from false. They are mutually exclusive terms. True, if it's true, it cannot be false. If it's false, then it cannot be true. That's the law of excluded middle. All right, so when we come to statements, a statement is a sentence that is true or false. Now, you all learned, when you learned English as little children, you learned the various kinds of statements. There are interrogative, pardon the misspelled word there. There are declarative. There are imperative. And then I think we throw in exclamatory, which is not a statement either. Okay? Interrogative is a question. Declarative is a sentence. Imperative is a sentence with a period. And then exclamatory sentence ends with an exclamation point. It's an exclamation. All right? So a statement then would be a declarative statement. But essentially it's a statement that you can attach a true or a false to. Okay? Statements are the verbal expression of judgment. Let me clear this. Hopefully you've got this down in your notes, or else you just pause it, rewind it. Okay, so a statement is the verbal expression of judgment. Statements are either universal or particular. Okay, a universal statement would say all or no. All people are human. That's a universal statement. No dogs are cats. That's a universal statement. Okay? Particular would use the word some in some form or other. Many, most, a few, a couple, some. Okay? It is a particular. The universal predicates something about every member of the subject. The particular predicates something about some of the subject, a particular part of the subject. All right? Then statements also are either affirmative or negative. Affirmative or negative. Affirmative affirms something about the subject. Negative denies something about the subject. Okay? So all would be affirmative. And no would be negative. Some would also be affirmative. And some not would be negative.